Coming up in our newscast tonight, President Moon Jae-in holds a cabinet meeting ahead of a parliamentary audit session. He calls for his administration's sincere participation and urged the National Assembly to support the government's efforts to bring peace on the Korean peninsula. South Korea's National Assembly begins its inspection of the current administration. More than 750 government bodies will be in the hot seat during the sessions. U.S. President Donald Trump says the second Pyongyang-Washington summit can take place after the country's midterm elections. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley announces plans to resign by the end of the year, becoming the latest high-profile figure to leave the Trump administration. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome, I'm Daniel Choi. On day one of the parliamentary audit, President Moon Jae-in held a meeting with his top aides. While stressing the need for inspection, the South Korean leader urged the National Assembly to not impose a double standard. Arirang Seoul correspondent Hwang Ho-jun has our top story.
President Moon acknowledged the occasion as a way for the National Assembly to exercise checks and balances on the executive branch, but he also called it a chance for the administration to look back on its work over the past year. Thus, he called on his administration to participate sincerely in the audit as if it were answering the people directly.
타당한 지적과 합리적 대안은 적극 수용해서 정책에 반영하는 것을 마다하지 않아야 할 것입니다. 한편으로 잘못된 지적이나 오해에 대해서는 사실관계나 정부 입장을 분명하게 밝혀 국민이 공연한 걱정을 하지 않도록 해주기 바랍니다.
At the same time, he criticized the National Assembly for not honoring its constitutional duties. He denounced lawmakers for failing to adopt confirmation hearing reports on the 3 Constitutional Court justice nominees, which created a vacuum on the court after the 3 outgoing justices stepped down 3 weeks ago. President Moon called it an infringement of the people's constitutional rights. He also blasted Parliament for putting the process of ratifying the Panmunjom Declaration on hold.
한반도의 상황이 빠르게 앞으로 나가고 있는데 국회에는 판문점 선언 비준 동의안을 상임위에 상정조차 하지 않은 채 제자리에 멈춰 있습니다.
It was September 11th when the government submitted its bill to ratify the agreement signed by President Moon and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at the first Inter-Korean summit in April. The bill was submitted a week before the South Korean leader left for Pyongyang for his 3rd summit with his North Korean counterpart. President Moon urged the National Assembly to support and join the government's efforts to write a new history of peace on the Korean peninsula, which he said is what the South Korean people sincerely desire. And the international community, he noted, is watching closely. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Staying with the Parliament's annual audit of the current administration, through early November, 753 government ministries and agencies will be questioned by lawmakers. Kim Min-ju sheds light on the key issues of day one.
For the next few weeks, there'll likely be no let-up in the back and forth between rival parties as they carry out a full-fledged evaluation of the Moon Jae-in government's past year in office. Among the 12 parliamentary committee audits underway on Wednesday, the Foreign Affairs Committee was no exception, the subject of debate being the remarks of the foreign minister.
Is the government willing to lift the May 24th measure?
Yes, I believe it's being reviewed.
The May 24 measure are sanctions imposed on the North after its deadly torpedo attack on a South Korean warship in 2010, which included a ban on trade and investment. While the ruling party said such bold measures are needed to boost the peace momentum, it drew strong criticism from the opposition bloc, which pointed out that North Korea has neither apologized for the attack nor has a promise not to repeat such acts. They also objected that concrete developments towards denuclearization are still lacking, especially when it comes to the North submitting a list of its nuclear weapons and facilities. The minister later apologized for the sanctions remark and said it was an issue that would be dealt with flexibility. She also noted that most of the sanctions in place overlap with UN sanctions, so lifting it wouldn't have much impact, and the developments regarding inter-Korean relations and denuclearization progress will be taken into account. Over at the Defense Committee audit, one of the main issues was a military agreement signed by the two Koreas in Pyongyang last month, which among other things calls for the setting of buffer zones on land, air, and sea. The ruling party said the agreement eliminated the threats of conflict and will reduce accidental military clashes, while the opposition said the Seoul has compromised the security posture by preemptively deciding to disarm the military. At the Land and Transport Committee, under the microscope were the government's real estate measures. Opposition lawmakers argued that the government's measures to curb housing prices have failed, pointing out that prices have continued to rise in the capital region. But the ruling party did not budge, saying that the surge in housing prices in the first place was triggered by the easing of regulations under the previous conservative government, which is said to encourage people to buy homes and engage in speculation. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States as allies will continue their journey to peace. That's part of President Moon Jae-in's message read out on his behalf by Pyu Jin, the Minister of Patriots and Veterans Affairs. The address was delivered at a commemoration ceremony for the Battle of Changjin during the Korean War, in which, according to Moon, UN forces distinguished themselves as heroes. The president thanked those service members for fighting to save people, mostly refugees. He added that battle 68 years ago paved the way to peace on the Korean peninsula today. Today marks the 73rd anniversary of the establishment of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party. Usually, the regime celebrates this occasion with reports from the state media and a number of grand events, but the atmosphere this year was quite calm. For details, let's turn to our Oh Jung-hee.
October 10th is one of the four major dates North Korea celebrates every year. The date marks the foundation of its ruling Workers' Party of Korea back in 1945. But this year's celebration was quiet compared to previous years. Pyongyang's senior officials visited the party founding museum on Tuesday, and performances are being held across the country, but overall, there's less emphasis on the date from the regime.
Usually, the militaries of South Korea and the U.S. would be on a readiness posture on this day. But there's been no particular movement seen from North Korea. They've already held a military parade a month ago on September 9th. Also, North Korea is negotiating with the U.S. and South Korea. They're holding back from showing any hardline stance.
Pyongyang's state-run newspaper, Dodong-Sinmun, released an op-ed on Wednesday that stresses the goal of economic development. It called on all North Koreans to work as one to successfully carry out the 5-year development plan. It also said that Kim Jong-un has brought about a wave of peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula. All that stands in stark contrast to the report last year, which claimed Pyongyang should win in its confrontation with Washington through its simultaneous development of nuclear weapons and the economy. Meanwhile, the tight relationship between Beijing and Pyongyang also stands out this year. The Chinese Communist Party sent a floral basket to Pyongyang's Workers' Party, and the state newspaper reported about it on its front page. In the past 2 years, Pyongyang did not report about it despite receiving the gift. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea, China, and Russia issued a joint communique after their vice foreign ministers held three-way talks in Moscow. The statement noted the Korean Peninsula issue was at the center of their discussions. That China and Russia expressed support for Pyongyang's negotiations with Seoul and Washington. But it stressed the process of normalizing relations and building peace must involve synchronized and reciprocal steps by the relevant parties. The three states urged the UN Security Council to undertake a timely review of its sanctions against the North, highlighting that the regime has taken steps towards denuclearization. Malnutrition is still a very serious problem in North Korea. Around 4 in 10 of its citizens suffer due to food shortage. The UN's humanitarian agencies are working to provide needed aid to women and children in the regime, but gathering the required funding is proving to be difficult. Yoon Jung-min has the full story.
The World Food Program says some 40% of North Korea's population, around 10 million people, are suffering from malnutrition. The United Nations Food Agency provides fortified cereals and enriched biscuits to 650,000 women and children each month, but says it may have to cut its charity program due to a lack of funding. The agency said some donors and companies have been reluctant to fund aid programs for North Korea, even though humanitarian support is excluded from sanctions imposed by the UN Security Council for the regime's nuclear and ballistic missile tests. A number of countries, including France, Switzerland, and Sweden, are participating in the program. The U.S., the WFP's biggest donor, does not support food aid for North Korea at the present time. The WFP says $52 million is needed this year alone to tackle malnutrition in North Korea. Meanwhile, Radio Free Asia reported Tuesday that the UN Children's Fund provided nutrition aid and medication for 1.3 million children in North Korea in the first half of the year. In a report released by the agency, it said it conducted checkups on more than 1 million children in the north and has been taking care of undernourished children, providing them with vitamin A supplements and other nourishment. It also provided vaccinations and other medicine to children and pregnant women. UNICEF also appealed for more financial aid to help support children in need in the north. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Washington's top diplomat is expected to have discussed details for a second meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. during his latest visit to Pyongyang. On the date and location of the hotly anticipated event, President Donald Trump dished out a few hints. Lee Ji-won shares with us his remarks.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the highly anticipated second North Korea-U.S. summit will happen after the midterm elections on November 6th. Reuters reported on the development on Tuesday as President Trump spoke to reporters on board Air Force One while flying to Iowa for a political rally. With the crunch elections just a matter of weeks away, President Trump told them that he can't just leave now. Earlier at the White House, President Trump also discussed possible sites for the summit. But among the possible locations, Singapore probably isn't going to be one of them.
Well, it is happening, and we're setting that up right now. That was part of the reason that Mike was going over to meet. They're setting up the meeting, and we'll be announcing that probably a different location. Singapore was fantastic, but we'll probably do a different location.
When asked whether his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida could be a possible location, the U.S. leader said it might be.
He'd probably like that. I'd like that, too. I think it would be good, but we'll see. We're talking about 3 or 4 different locations. Timing won't be too far away.
President Trump also touted his very good relationship with Chairman Kim and cited the recent lack of nuclear and missile tests as a sign of progress in the denuclearization process. He added he believes North Korea will be incredibly economically successful if it denuclearizes. This comes as U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told reporters at the White House on Tuesday that he made real progress on his four-nation tour of Northeast Asia that took him through Japan, North Korea, South Korea, and China. Pompeo said that while there's still much work to be done, Washington can now see a path where they'll achieve the ultimate goal of the full and verified denuclearization of North Korea. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, will be stepping down from her post at the end of the year. Her announcement to resign marks another high-level departure from the Donald Trump administration. Here's Noah Ram with a closer look.
The announcement was made on Tuesday as Haley sat beside Trump in the Oval Office. The president thanked the UN envoy for her work.
Nikki Haley, ambassador to the United Nations, has been very special to me. She's done an incredible job. She's a fantastic person, very importantly, but she also is somebody that gets it.
Haley did not provide any specific reasons as to why she was stepping down, but stressed it was time for change. She also dismissed speculation she would be challenging Trump for the White House in 2020.
I think you have to be selfless enough to know when you step aside and allow someone else to do the job. So thank you, Mr. President. It's been an honor of a lifetime. And I will say this, for all of you that are going to ask about 2020, no, I'm not running for 2020. I can promise you what I'll be doing is campaigning for this one. So I look forward to supporting the president in the next election.
The former South Carolina governor has been the face of Trump's America First policy at the UN, steering the U.S. withdrawal from several UN programs and defending Washington's hardline policies against North Korea, Iran, Syria and China. But there have also been times when she has distanced herself from the president. The timing of Tuesday's announcement has raised questions about her real intentions, especially with only a month left until the midterm elections. Noaram, Arirang News.
Back here in the nation, a new report shows the return of venture capital firms in Korea rose to this year's highest levels during the first 8 months. This is mainly thanks to deregulative policies by the government. Kim Ji-yeon breaks down the digits for us.
The amount of earnings among venture capital firms in Korea rose to its highest level this year. A report by the Ministry of SMEs and Startups released Wednesday shows that the combined principal of investment and profit of venture capital firms recorded more than $1.6 billion during the January to August period, more than double the estimate recorded during the same period last year. At this pace, the ministry projects the amount to reach nearly $2.5 billion by the end of this year. The ministry attributed the rise to the government's deregulative policies in facilitating private-led growth by granting fund of funds, as well as raising $883 million in funding merger and acquisition transactions. The report says initial public offerings still remain as the best means for companies, particularly those engaged in bio or ICT sectors, to obtain liquidity. By company, the biggest yield amounted to $92 million by e-commerce platform solution provider Cafe24, the first venture firm to be listed in Korea's secondary bourse KOSDAQ under the so-called Tesla standards, which allows listing of promising companies that have not yet posted significant profits. The ranking was followed by local biotech companies, Alex Pharmaceuticals, and BioLeaders, which are also listed on the KOSDAQ. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The 2018 International Fleet Review is now on. The host nation's Navy organized a number of programs through Sunday. The main event, which showcases dozens of warships from 12 different countries, is on tomorrow. Kan Young-woo files us this report from Jeju.
With several maritime patrol aircrafts and helicopters leading the way, more than a dozen warships in a line formation sail towards the flagship. The South Korean Navy held a final rehearsal before the main event of this year's International Fleet Review, which is set to take place on Thursday off the southern coast of Jeju Island. After the warships and submarines passed by the flagship, the South Korean Navy's underwater demolition team showed off their maritime infiltration skills by jumping from an aircraft at a high altitude into the operation area in the sea.
As the main driving force of the nation's maritime power, the South Korean Navy will support peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and keep sailing until our country becomes one of the world's strongest maritime powers.
Taking place for the third time in South Korea, the 2018 International Fleet Review features the largest number of participating foreign naval forces, with representatives from 46 countries coming to Jeju Island. Most of the events are open to the public at the Jeju Civilian Military Complex port through Sunday. As well as showing the South Korean Navy's firepower, this year's International Fleet Review will highlight the nation's strong ties with its allies. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News, Jeju.
October 10th is World Day Against the Death Penalty. For 2 decades, South Korea has not executed anyone. The sentence is largely seen as a practice that goes against human rights principles. But according to our Oh Soo-young, it's undecided whether the law should be scrapped from the country's constitution.
It appears most South Koreans would like to see the death penalty system to remain, at least symbolically, until an alternative system is introduced. On Wednesday, a survey conducted by the National Human Rights Commission found 58.9% of South Koreans believe grounds for capital punishment should remain constitutional, but expressed caution on actually enforcing the law. The number is up by 2.2 percentage points compared to the previous survey taken 15 years ago, while the number of those calling for an eventual or immediate scrapping fell by 8 and 5 percentage points respectively. As South Korea hasn't enforced execution since 1997, international observers have classified it as a country that has technically abolished capital punishment. Still, the general public has been hesitant to do away with the law completely. According to the survey, the biggest reason for keeping the system was the perceived increase in brutal crimes, with respondents believing capital punishment could curb outbreaks of crime. At the same time, 70% said the death penalty should be scrapped if there is an alternative punishment system. Experts say the public should consider the actual effect of the current policy to form a concrete stance on the issue.
The Justice Ministry's data shows murder figures have been decreasing even after Korea stopped carrying out the death penalty. The figures have fallen to 3 digits for the past 3 to 4 years. There's no case for the system to exist, even symbolically.
While lawmakers have been proposing bills every year since 2014 to legally abolish death penalty, such attempts have fallen through, suggesting a lack of public support. Human rights watchers say there should be stronger efforts to inform and guide the public.
So we've seen this in France as a leading example. In 1981, more than 60% of the population themselves were in favour of retention of the death penalty, but the president at the time took the step to abolish it. And then we've seen the population come around. So I think, yeah, education is key, but I think political leadership is also a very crucial element.
Only 16 countries had banned the use of death penalty by 1977, but now more than 140 countries have either abolished or stopped practicing the law under basic human rights principles. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, BTS continues to garner greater global recognition. The K-pop band was named Favorite Social Artist at the 2018 American Music Awards. The boys become the first Korean artist to earn the honors. Seo Eun-kyung zooms in on the significance of their latest accomplishment.
K-pop megagroup BTS have once again proved their worldwide popularity. BTS won the award for Favorite Social Artist at the American Music Awards, which along with the Billboard Music Awards and the Grammys, is considered one of the top 3 music award ceremonies in the U.S. The Favorite Social Artist category was decided by online votes from fans, with Cardi B, Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato, and Shawn Mendes also nominated. BTS did not perform live at the awards as they were in London for shows at the O2 Arena. Instead, in a pre-recorded video shared during the red carpet show, BTS thanked their fans and said how thrilled they were to receive such a special award. The award is the latest in a string of achievements for BTS this year. The boy band became the first K-pop act to top the U.S. Billboard 200 albums chart and the first Korean group to perform at New York City Field. They also won their second Billboard Music Award, as well another 2 Teen Choice Awards for Choice Fandom and Choice International Artist. BTS were also invited to speak at the UN General Assembly to send an inspiring message to the global youth. And for their services to Korean culture, they were awarded the South Korean Presidential Medal for Cultural Merit on Monday. BTS are currently on a sold-out world tour to promote their Love Yourself album series, performing 41 shows across 20 cities from August this year to April next year. Seo Eun-kyung, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, it's gotten a lot colder all of a sudden.
That's right, Daniel. Now, the cold air is blowing from the northwest, plunging down the readings to their lowest this season so far. That's going to be tomorrow. That includes Seoul. And the wind chill will make you feel even colder than these readings, so dress warmly tomorrow morning, especially if you are in the near coastlines. And looking onto the brighter side, the nation will be under nice partly cloudy skies during the day. And at the same time, Beijing will be sunnier and warmer, while Tokyo will be rainy. And most parts of Korea will begin the morning with single-digit readings tomorrow, about 6 and 7 degrees Celsius lower than today. Seoul starts off to 6 degrees Celsius, and Daegu and Gyeongju both begins at 7 degrees. And the daytime highs in Seoul will rise up to 14 degrees, while Gwangju and Daegu are a little bit higher at 17 degrees. Now, in the meantime, there's no sign of rain, just nice clear blue skies dominating the country. However, the weather will stay cold up until the weekend with temperatures to 4 to 7 degrees Celsius below the seasonal average. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
This is where we have to wrap things up. As always, thank you for staying with us.